So what did you do when you got out then? Where'd you go to school?
Well, actually, I went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City on a football scholarship. But the coach there wanted me to participate in 2 sports, and I didn't want to run track. So I kind of gave him a piece of my mind and dropped out because he took half my scholarship. And then I worked. I played semi-professional football for a couple of years, and I earned my own money. And so when I went back to school, I went back to Lincoln, and then I graduated in 3.5 years with a bachelor's degree in psychology.
How about that? And you have some additional postgraduate training then that led
Absolutely. I have a master's degree from Webster University in human relations, and I have a PhD in psychology from Leavenworth College and Seminary, which is located, used to be located here in Maryland Heights, Missouri. So all of my education is Missouri education.
So are you in the field of clinical psychology?
Actually, I worked as a civilian personnel specialist for the Army for 25 years, and in that capacity, I had a number of jobs. I did some counseling, I did some training, I did some staffing, I did some job development. I did all of that for them for 25 years, and then I retired. I was in the school system for about 2 or 3 years, and so I work for a company now that finds adults jobs, and I went to them for them to find me a part-time job almost 6 years ago, and they actually hired me from their orientation. So I've been doing motivational training for them part-time for almost 6 years.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. That's terrific. That's extremely valuable. I mean, there's an important social benefit from your work, and it's...
We get the demographics that we deal with are very, very educationally and financially, deprived, and we at least we motivate them coming out of those classes, and we've had some successful people. I've written several books, to my knowledge, to my credit rather, and I've had 3 authors that I've actually personally recommended to my publisher that have written books.
Terrific.
Yeah, and so we
good for you.
We've had people to start their own businesses, and so we do quite well considering the demographics that we have to deal with.
That's very impressive. I'm very pleased to have you on, and it must have been utterly appalling and traumatic to discover that your daughter had died in Iraq in 2005. She was only 19 years old, and she'd only been in the military, a year or more?
She had been in the military for 10 months.
10 months, not even a year.
No, not even a year, but she had been in Iraq less than 6 weeks and she was dead.
What kind of unit was she assigned to?
She was assigned to the 29th Infantry, and she was her MOS was supply management. However, the time that she was over there, she worked in the telecommunications room. Therefore, she had access to telephones, and so she called home almost every day and didn't indicate to us that she was having any kind of problems over there. But next thing you know, we get a visit saying she's dead.
Did you talk to her the day before she died?
Actually, my wife and I both talked to my daughter on the 17th of July in 2005. The Army came to my front door the 19th at 7:30 in the morning. But if you go back and you track their paperwork honestly, my daughter got off from work the evening of the 18th, which was that Monday. And this is what was ironic and show you how bizarre this whole thing is. She gets off from work wearing a Army work uniform. She goes into her barracks. She changes into jogging shoes, PT pants, PT shirt. She puts an infrared reflecting belt around her waist so she can be seen at night. She stops in the PX. She buys M&Ms, lip balm, and soda. And then you're going to say she walks across the post, sits down in a dark, trashy contractor's tent, stuck an M16 rifle in her mouth, and shot herself. And even before I get into the physical evidence, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. And I mean, my heart goes out to you too, Dr. Johnson, and to your wife. I mean, they have to undergo, not only the loss of a daughter, but under these grotesque circumstances where, I mean, I know enough about your case. It's going to become very obvious to the audience that something untoward was going on here, and that this appears to have been an attempt to commit a murder and make it appear to be a suicide it's just blatant.
Yeah, and it has had a tremendous impact on my family. My son and he just turned 30, and he's had an opportunity. He writes songs, and he's had an opportunity to go to another state to work on his career. And we talked the other night, and he told me he don't want to leave home, and he said that and what's really bothering him, and he's come to me crying before, losing LaVena, and now he's saying, man, it's just hard to accept the fact that people around you won't be living forever, and so he
yes.
has that kind of, and my wife, there are nights she can't sleep, and
yes.
I have to keep her busy, and because if she sits and thinks, and she just goes over this. And
yes.
We don't cry as much as we used to. We still find ourselves, still cheering up, and
yes.
I'm so angry
yes.
that I think that motivates me to do what it is that I have
yes.
to do.
Well, my own mother actually committed suicide when I was 11 years old, so I understand, the nature of the effects of a legitimate suicide. But I also have a daughter, and were something to happen to her as happened to your daughter, it would be so traumatic. It would be so devastating.
Yeah, and these people that are covering in the Army, they would do the same thing if it was their daughter. You're not going to tell me. I saw the movie The General's Daughter, and
yes.
that guy was very callous about his daughter's death. But you and I know, I don't think any father would just, be so pro-Army that they would just allow somebody to just, just honor their daughter like that. I just don't believe that. But I know one thing for a fact. We are a very, very close family, and my daughter had a tremendous support system, and she knew for a fact if she had any problems, she could come and talk to her parents. And so to jump up and say just arbitrarily she jumped up and committed suicide, I mean, that, and then the other thing, too, my years as a behaviorist tell me some simple things. For an example, women as a rule don't jump up and just arbitrarily commit suicide.
Yes.
And when they do, they might take pills, they might OD, they might even get brave enough to cut their wrists. But you're not going to talk about too many females that's going to stick an M16 rifle in
yes.
their mouth and pull the trigger. And then you're talking about my daughter being 5'1", and that weapon being at least 40 inches long.
Yes.
So physically, that creates a problem in lieu of the fact that some genius from the Army said in the L.A. Times that it was possible. It really isn't.
Yeah, maybe she put her toe on the trigger, right?
Well, they didn't go into that because she had her tennis shoes on. Now, they tried that with Tina Priest. Are you familiar with that story?
No, I think I'm not, but...
Okay, I'm going to write quickly. Tina Priest was actually raped in the Army by her platoon sergeant. She went and reported it to a chaplain. The chaplain referred her to a psychologist. Psychologist examined her, said she was exhausted but stable, sent her back to her unit, and some days later they found her dead with a gunshot wound to the stomach. Well, the ballistics test said at 5'2", it was physically impossible for her to have shot herself, and the Army said she did it with her big toe.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah, they got away with it.
Plus the idea that your daughter would commit suicide after buying M&Ms and lip balm.
Yeah, and soda.
She just wanted to look real good, after she stuck that weapon in her mouth. I mean, how absurd can you get?
Yeah.
And then I take it the physical evidence, she was found in this contractor's tent, but the brains and gore that would have been blown out of her head were not on the tent.
That's true.